extinction. Honestly, that is what we are building towards. If you were to repackage the Age of Devils, the descending terror that is the Death Devil, it sounds oddly familiar to the sixth extinction for humanity. And there's a really, really big conversation surrounding that idea, which heavily involves the hero of hell, known as Pochita, but potentially a subtitle called the hero of humanity. But Pochita is interesting because he has a very unique ability. Obviously, his representation being of a chainsaw with the ability to erase doesn't really align. A lot of people love the birth motif that Pochita represents unbirth, the umbilical cords, the usage of chainsaws in its early invention for miscarriages and utilage of a birthing tool to cut the umbilical cord. The way he eats devils to erase them, but also throw them back up to bring them back conceptually. For many years now, I've talked about what Pochita could be and what his role within this story is. Alongside this new chapter, the plan that the Death Devil, previously known as Fami, is putting something in motion. She is going to throw the world into utter chaos and terror. And she's going to do that by using famine and the fake chainsaw men as her tools of war. She now has them under control. Obviously, this does not align with what Death wants. She likes humanity, and even if she could be killed, there's no chance that the next death that replaces her would feel the same way. So why throw the world into chaos? Why cause this abyssal terror? Pochita has a very interesting function that if someone were to call out for his help, save us Chainsaw Man, he has to oblige. The reason this works, for now, is Death has a very interesting problem. This new chapter gives us a reveal that when Nostradamus' prophecy comes true, for some reason or another, Death will awaken. This is out of her control. So of course, even if you could kill her, you can't because she'd just be reset and you cause another problem. So your next train of thought is to use Pochita, and that's exactly what Fami and fake Chainsaw Men offer. Get eaten by Chainsaw Men, get erased so humans can live on. However, it is not that simple, so of course the steps to actually activating Chainsaw Man and having him be the hero of hell and humanity combined is perhaps what Death is doing, chucking the world into chaos. So people, humanity, can call upon their savior being Chainsaw Man. Now whether you want to say that war is utilizing or weaponizing Chainsaw Man or it's a solo dolo thing, it's up to you. But so far that is the imagery that is supplied. That's the idea. You might wonder, what does this have to do with the sixth extinction? There's a lot of different variations within literature of the sixth extinction, sometimes even being the final extinction for humanity. There's a lot of logistics that go into it. It's proposed that throughout humanity's existence, there has to be periodic resets for the world to heal, for humanity to heal, to take pressure off it. In theory, this is a very scary thing because you don't really know when it could happen. Sometimes it's natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, ice age, etc. The sixth extinction, however, is viewed to be more isolated to humanity's doing. War, nuclear, mass hysteria, and plague-driven, basically the identity of humanity closing in on itself, going to war with one another, and wiping everybody out with it. The remaining humans of that sixth extinction would live through and to create perhaps a more prosper and hopeful humanity. There is a darker version of it, that if humanity goes through the sixth extinction, it would be its last. There would be no great reset. That nuclear warfare and climate change would cause so much damage to the world that humanity would cease to exist, basically making Earth uninhabitable. And whatever remains of the human population dwindles down day by day rapidly until no more. What does this have to do with Chainsaw Man? Well, currently the events with this recent chapter, alongside the whole idea of Nostradamus' prophecy, looks towards the prospects of an extinction level event. That humanity is on the brink of total annihilation. For a long time, we didn't know what the reasoning for that would be, but now we know that death will awaken in some way, shape, or form, and it needs to be stopped. war is still a problematic thing. We don't know how her intentions or her prosperity in terms of eternal warfare could actually be. That is a problem in itself. But what really meshes things together is Pochita and what he actually represents. A very long time ago, I said that Pochita is not the Chainsaw Man devil or the unbirthed devil, but he is extinction, that he is true to his name. The ability to be able to erase things, beings, humans, concepts, ideas is that of quality to utter extinction. But I've always wondered where Chainsaw Man has come from, why Pochita is such an anomaly-like being. We've never got mention of him being a primal fear, yet his power quite easily rivals one. He's not a 4 horsemen of the apocalypse or a pseudo 5th horseman. He's just another devil. But there is one link throughout this entire story that has been unknown to us, and that is the name of hybrids. The names that have been erased from both devil and human history. Why? Perhaps there's no importance there, but the more I think about what the purpose of hybrids are, combining devils and humans, it makes this idea of balance and connection rather interesting. So far, some of the most powerful beings represented within this story really like humanity. They like to live among humans comfortably. Some are obviously more disastrous than others. Currently, death itself really likes humanity and wants to savor it. Pochita has always felt like the embodiment of extinction, but not isolated to his own devil. For some reason in the back of my mind, I feel he is either a tool, a child, or something partially disconnected from death itself. Something that either death has created, death has weaponized, or death has spawned to cause balance within the world. There is also the possibility that Pochita is kind of just an anomaly being, that primal fears and horsemen and devils alike collectively share a common fear that isn't actually death, but being forgotten, no longer existing. So even if that's the case, he still works as the representation of extinction for both humanity and for devils. Currently, it seems like death wants to weaponize that, to cause that said terror within humanity, so a weapon that is the equivalence of extinction can save humanity. I've always really enjoyed the idea that the 6th extinction is actually Pochita, that him as a being represents humanity's extinction. But similar to a low percentage of devils, primal fears, and horsemen, he genuinely enjoys humanity. He enjoys people, and specifically he enjoys dreams. Pochita is a curious character and seems to be powerful enough to kind of do whatever he wants. Another part of me believes that the name for the hybrids that were erased is something equivalent to children or tools. It's very uneasy that all of the hybrids that we have seen so far have been viewed with the intention of tools. They have been used as tools, as weapons for said horsemen. Pochita seems to be no different, but his power is obviously scaled much higher. This makes me think that perhaps the horseman or another primal fear has created the hybrids to represent different structures, different weapons of war. Which means it would make sense that perhaps a previous death utilized Pochita as the 6th extinction. Think about it like this. Imagine this Nostradamus' prophecy. Death descends, but it's not the one we know, one that hates humanity. And alongside is her tool of extinction, Pochita, a being that is able to erase anything and anyone that stands in her way. Realistically, death could control everything, be the most powerful being to ever exist that even primal fears can't go up against. We know there is a hierarchy, there is a structure, there is some sort of political pull and gain within both the human world and devil world when it comes to how they operate. It's not structured or coherent by any means, but the remnants of it is there. This just makes me think of Pochita's previous engagement with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and perhaps a extinction level event that happened prior to the story beginning. For a reason unknown to us, Pochita went toe-to-toe with a bunch of devils, a bunch of primal fears, and all 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Now let me ask you a question. Why? For what reason would you need an army of that caliber? Devils, other hybrids perhaps, the four horsemen working together and primal fears to verse someone like Pochita? The only thing that I could realistically come up with is during this time, Pochita went AWOL. He was no longer under control of either death or another horseman or a primal fear. Whatever structure they had around him was no longer containable. So to try and bring his power back, because letting it out loose is very problematic for everybody, they try to bring him back under control using the four horsemen method. Every horseman has an ability to control primal fears and devils. Why else would you weaponize them that way? Why else do they use hybrids like tools? So you use other primal fears to try and get Pochita to bring him under your control, and every four horsemen would try their best to do it and ultimately fail. Pochita seems like he wants to be free, so where better else to escape than the human world? And perhaps that is where you start Chainsaw Man's story. It would be very funny to me if the reason all of this stuff is happening now, the reason why Control went after Pochita, the reason why War is after Pochita, the reason why New Famine even knows about Pochita erasing people and that erasing death will stop this prophecy, is that it's most likely happened before. So now I'm thinking, with the new chapter, with the new information and the perspectives that we have, death continuously goes through resets. That for whatever reason, because humanity peaks to the fear of death, it awakens. And for each time that that has happened, it is isolated to the extinction event. So when humanity is on the cusp of extinction, eternal war, climate change, basically the end of days, death has a countdown and thus will awaken. And currently the only thing that could stop that countdown would be Pochita. So what better way for either versions of death or even the horsemen is to create a tool or a weapon that stops that is fully able to erase the concept of death and then regurgitate it back up. Or even to a similar way that Denji done a soft reset with Control and Naoyuta. It's not the same, but you get the idea. So what it looks like, every extinction humanity has gone through, being a total of perhaps 5, is because of humanity kind of spiraling out of control and death awakening to obviously destroy everything. But to stop those extinctions, you have Pochita reset a lot of people and do a lot of work in the human world and in the devil world, and then it starts again. And a great thing about those previous extinctions is that you can actually erase them as well. So you start to go down a path of Pochita being a balancer, a savior for humanity and even devils alike, because he's erasing certain concepts that would continue to spread fear of that oncoming or previous extinction. Now here's the kicker. Public safety. What would you think they would try to do if they knew any of this information, prior or current, about extinctions, about death's countdown and awakening, and what Pochita is capable of? You try to evolve. You try to take humanity past extinction. If you can't survive the extinction as humanity currently, why not evolve humans further? Why not take out certain concepts that hold back human evolution and force them to grow? So whatever hardships come humanity's way, humans still remain. Funny enough, that is what public safety in a nutshell is trying to do. Getting rid of aging, for example, was their one attempt of trying to see what would happen to humanity being forced to evolve. But Chainsaw Man is sloppy. Erasing things is sloppy. It's not linear. It is incredibly circular. You erase aging, but the idea of aging still technically exists, just within different forms. So humanity does change, aging does cease to exist, but something else takes its place. If you knew that an extinction level event was coming, the 6th extinction, you would want to evolve humans to survive for it by using the one being that represents that, Pochita. And with how Death has positioned herself within this chapter, it makes her the primary villain and the primary problem, that death needs to be reset by Pochita, but Pochita won't come out to play the way that everyone wants him to. So you cause chaos, you cause mayhem, you cause utter destruction, and there's two versions of it. Either war comes out to play wielding Pochita, or humanity collectively asks for help, for Chainsaw Man to save them. The curveball and problem is probably war itself. She likes warfare. The idea of eternal war precedes the sixth extinction. It is the reason why it kind of happens. So funny enough, the Age of Devils, quote unquote, could still actually be because of Yoru, just not the final goal. War could literally be the reason why death awakens, why the fear of death peaks for humanity is because of Yoru. So if death plays into that idea and kickstarts the eternal war herself, everybody collectively gets erased. And it makes all the things that old Fami has done throughout the story, now death, all the more clear. Probing, the prodding, the way she's handled in this chapter, the clouds start to dissipate and clarity starts to appear. I liked this chapter a lot. I think it kickstarts the finale of this story. Beautifully depicted, horrifying idea, but also playful. I see this story not lasting longer than perhaps 40 odd chapters. This is the final arc and things are about to begin. Everyone is kind of on the playing field now. We still have questions that we hope we get answers for, and eventually, with time, perhaps we will get them.